Good morning, everybody. This is the greatest place to start your Sunday morning. Welcome to the Cascade Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in North Central Washington. For those who are new to our fellowship, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being part of this vibrant community. Friends, family are all welcome. Every person of goodwill, just as you are, whatever body you inhabit, whomever you are, whatever your age, we're all joyful that you are here this morning. My name is Hideo Fujita. I am serving as your celebrant this morning. I serve on the worship teams, the website team, the tech teams. The presentation, the delivery of our presentations takes a small community of people, which are listed in your order of service. And one thing that I always ask for is after the service, give us feedback. Let us know how we're doing. We always want to hear from you, learn about things, what we can do better, which are greatly appreciated. Let's see. For those who are in the sanctuary, if you turn around, look at the exit sign. Right above there is a camera, and wave hello to our Zoom audience out there. Welcome, everybody. This morning, February 16th, 2025, the theme of our service is on generosity. Our worship leader and speaker this morning is Reverend Thomas Perchlik. I have a couple announcements, and I call them announcements, but rather than announcements, they are more acknowledgments that I want to pass on. First of all, one of the things that we're blessed here with are some great musicians. And I want to thank Ken Honeycutt, who's playing piano for us today, Larry Tobiska, who is the leader for our choir, and all the singers who are going to be in front of you this morning. Thank you very much. For the second announcement, acknowledgement, each Sunday we focus on a specific value within the Unitarian Universalist value. Generosity is our focus this month. And you may look around the sanctuary and see that there are new arts that's been put up over the last week. The new fabric collage right in front of me, Emily Soroki put this together, and this is a beautiful rendering here. The new graphic UU design with kind of the flower design with the 6 petals around it is also on our sanctuary wall. That, if you haven't looked at that, where it says building bridges. So thank you to the visual arts team. For our land acknowledgement, for millennia, the Pasquosa have been stewards of this land, fishing, hunting, gathering plants, medicine, and food, and practicing cultural traditions. The Pasquosa, now part of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation, still live here. We acknowledge that their land had been taken over because of U.S. government broke treaty obligations and allowed uninvited colonists to settle here. We stand beside the community of the Pasquosa First Nation people as they continue their traditions and seek to have their rights recognized. If you'd like to learn more, you can go to our website, cascadeuu.org. On the Justice tab, if you click on that, you'll see some information on Indigenous rights, reparations, and advocacy groups. And I'll just make a quick note here. Petra and I are working on enhancing our website. Right now, it's something that's been sitting around for a long time, unchanged. It's very dense with text and information. So we're going to put some color, some pictures and graphics in things. And as we slowly do this, there's only 2 of us and we've got a lot of stuff to do. As we do this, we would like to get your feedback, just saying, hey, what happened to this thing? I always looked at it and I can't find it anymore. well, we need to know. We'll move on to the affirming connections part of our order of service, and we will open with hymn number 203, All Creatures of the Earth and Sky. We're going to sing verses 1 through 3, and the lyrics will be shown on the screen. So please stand up in body and service, spirit, and sing.
Please be seated. I call you into the spirit of worship to consider what is of highest worth. These words are adapted from Tania E. Marquez, who works down in Southern California, but she's now working in our whole region, and she will be our congregational services representative to the Unitarian Universalist Association. But I didn't know that when I picked this reading. And then she contacted me on email and said, hey, I'd like to meet some of your people. She wrote, "It is a wonder, it is a mystery that our paths have crossed, that in the immensity of time and the vastness of space, the hugeness of the earth, we coincide here. I am in awe at the ways in which our lives intersect and intertwine, and at the beauty that we create together. May our coming together make us more compassionate, more hopeful, more caring, more loving. May our hearts and minds be open to this hour, an offering of ourselves in worship. I am so glad you are here. Let us uphold what is of greatest worth, and let us marvel at the miracle of being here right now in the mystery that has brought us together."
The chalice and flame symbolize our congregation gathered in principles and faith. For those at home with the chalice, please join us in the lighting. Everybody here, please join us in speaking the lighting words that are printed on, that are on the screen. Let the purest of flames kindle in each of our hearts a pledge of justice, a commitment to freedom, and a reverent awe for the crystalline glories that sparkle our paths. Moving into the centering portion of the order of service, this is a time for all ages. I'm going to do this from behind the lectern, the safety of the lectern, and on pulpit. It is. It's a guard. I wrote "There Be Aliens," our story for this morning. The imagery comes from two sources, from the National Archives and from Densho, the Japanese American Legacy Project. The X-Files was a very popular TV show. It was a very big sci-fi show. When Andrew, my son, was in middle school, we would religiously watch that program every Friday night. We lived and breathed the slogan of that show: "The truth is out there." Well, I have a secret to share with you. My grandparents were aliens. A long, long time ago in the 1890s, all my grandparents traveled to the United States from a land far, far away on a steamship. The steamship took 17 days to cross the Pacific Ocean. They came from a land so distant, so far, so foreign. Their country of origin, Japan, seemed like a galaxy away. As immigrants, they came to this country with only a suitcase in each hand and the clothes on their back. They came for opportunity, for prosperity, to bring a better life for their children and their children's children. They shared their experiences through stories about family values. Storytelling was a gift that they gave to me growing up. Today, I'm sharing this gift with you. When I was 6 years old, I had an illness that almost took my life. I had what was called scarlet fever. Some of you may know that term. Today, we don't even use that term. Today, we say strep infection. Today, it's no big deal with antibiotics. In the 1950s, getting this infection was a big deal. It was easier to get, it was as challenging to get antibiotics in the 50s as it was in the early 2020s to get a COVID test. It's pretty non-existent. I ran a high fever. My chest turned bright red. It was rough, felt like sandpaper. My skin began to peel off. It was during this time my grandparents came and sat by my bed and held my hands, telling me stories, sharing stories about their life and family values. Here are 3 of those family value stories that they shared with me that night. This is the Cliff Notes version of these stories. Family value number 1, don't make waves. Don't make waves. In the 1890s, all my grandparents were just teenagers. They went through the ports of call. One set went through the port of call in Seattle. The others went through the port of call in San Francisco. They were so excited. This was just an incredible time of their lives. Everything was new, so different, so exotic. They found themselves just standing in the middle of the street, just staring at people. That's when they realized they were the aliens in an alien land. Strangers in a strange land. Their words echo with me today. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down. What I heard was, hey, don't make waves. Just hang out with all those other nails around you. Don't stick up. Here's family value number 2. Honor thy family. Honor thy family. In 1942, half of my family was affected by Executive Order 9066. February 19th, 1942, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, essentially ordering all Japanese American community off the west coast of the United States. 2/3 of the over 120,000 Japanese Americans who were affected and incarcerated for the duration of war were U.S. citizens through the 14th Amendment. The other 1/3, my grandparents' generations, they were labeled as enemy aliens. And they were sent to camps. My family was separated. And because during that time, with U.S. government laws and policies at the time, my grandparents' generations, they couldn't vote. It was against the law for them to become citizens. And so they couldn't do things like own property. As a result of 9066, they went to one of the 10 designated concentration camps spread across desolate areas of 7 states for the whole duration of World War II. They were given but 48 hours to tie up all their loose ends. They could take, as they did when they're immigrants coming to this country, a suitcase in each hand and the clothes on their backs. My family was separated, sent to separate camps. Their parting words to each other was, be credit to family, honor thy house. Be credit to family, honor thy house. As a 6-year-old, I didn't understand the richness of this phrase. What I understood is, you need to be good in no matter what you do because you represent our family and our honor. Family value number 3, the power of community. The power of community. By early 1946, all the concentration camps were closed. I thought this must have been a good time for my grandparents. They must have been a happy time. However, they told me this part of the story with smiles on their face, but the tears in our eyes told a much different story. They knew that life in the camps was challenging, of course. However, what they knew is that life outside the camps would even be more challenging. And they said, a single stick is easily broken, but 10 in a bundle are not. A single stick is easily broken, but 10 in the bundle are not. My fever broke the next morning. I slept the entire day. A doctor who had befriended our family, Dr. Robert Schwartz, who I'll be forever grateful for, he was one of the few doctors who would even talk to our family, heard about my situation and made a house call, and he brought some penicillin. And with that penicillin, I fully recovered. My grandparents taught me the most important gift that I could share with anybody is sharing stories about our family and family values. Through our stories, the threads of our lives are woven into a tapestry of our lives, and we carry that tapestry with us. And when we share it with others, that tapestry continues to grow. My gift to you this morning are the 3 lessons that I learned from my grandparents. 1, when you stand alone, you are vulnerable. 2, when you stand with your family, you have strength. And this, most importantly, when you stand within community, you have power. The end. We are.
Send them on their way.
Okay, yes. And we have children. If you would like to form an arch in the middle, we have. Here we go. Where? Go to with each other to find meaning in the spirit of care. Now go with each other to find meaning in the spirit of love that we share.
Well, while the 2 little ones are still here, this is Olive and Hazel, the last ones, and then Willow. These are all my grandchildren, and then the mother of the grandchildren is my oldest daughter, and then James Lacey is here. So while they were still visible, I wanted to introduce them instead of waiting till Joys and Sorrows. For the wisdom readings, I've chosen 2. One is this is my old practice, is to choose one really ancient reading and then one modern reading. The ancient reading is from chapter 1 of the Chandogya Upanishad. It's one of the oldest, most ancient texts from India. It's about 10,000 years old. It is here set in American English rather than ancient Sanskrit. The sound Om should be meditated upon. All singing begins with Om. The essence of all beings is the earth. The essence of the earth is water. The essence of water is plants. The essence of plants is in persons. The essence of persons is in speech, and the essence of speech is in Scripture. And the essence of Scripture, its beginning and end, is Om. Om is the best of all essences. It is the supreme, deserving the highest place. So what then is Scripture? Speech indeed is Scripture. The vital breath is the chant of Scripture. The syllable Om is the essence. Speech and breath form a couple, and those 2 become united in the sound Om. When a pair comes together, they fulfill each other's desire. It's called this one of the earliest Unitarian texts. It's all in that one. Oh. Second wisdom reading is contemporary reading. Second paragraph of an open letter on religion and science from the Clergy Letter Project, which was written in 1984. We, the undersigned, Christian clergy from many different traditions, which included Unitarian Universalists, we believe that the timeless truths of the Bible and the discoveries of modern science may comfortably coexist. We believe that the theory of evolution is a foundational scientific truth, one that has stood up to the rigorous scrutiny and upon which much of human knowledge and achievement will rest. To reject this truth, or to treat it as one theory amongst others, is to deliberately embrace scientific ignorance and transmit such ignorance to our children. We believe that among God's good gifts are human minds capable of critical thought, and that the failure to fully employ this gift is a rejection of the will of our Creator. That ends the readings, the summary of our wisdom heritages, our many sources. And now we'll talk again about community, about being together, about being connected by sharing significant moments in our lives. Take a flame down here. Each of you will have a chance to come forward, to say your name if there's something that needs to be said. To say something that you've been given permission to say about significant, honoring or memory, sorrow or joy in your life, and then to light a candle or to ask me to light a candle. If you really want to do that for 30 minutes, you can go to the Stone Blossom Sangha over by Superjet. Morning and evening, they have silent meditation for 30 minutes. If you pay attention, the numinous suffuses all of life. I grew up on the edge of the Great Plains, right between the mountains and the prairies of eastern Colorado. And at times I would see thunderstorms rolling up, getting closer, white, gray, and black towers rising taller than the mountains, rolling towards us. Sometimes filled with lightning, flashing, rumbling with the voice of the lightning. And always they seemed to me numinous. I learned this word numinous years later. Things that are awesome, but also have an edge of frightening power. The numinous fills us with wonder. It calls us to stand up or rise up, and yet at the same time has an edge to it. And when I heard that the theme that the Clergy Letter Project had chosen for Science and Religion Weekend was awe and wonder, I thought, oh, how easy it'll be to do that. We had a worship service back in the fall about awe. Always awe and wonder is everywhere. Someone who said, there are two kinds of people, the people who think everything's just ordinary and dross, and the people who think everything is wonderful. Generosity begins with a mindset of abundance. But then the clergy people of the Clergy Letter Project saw what was happening in this country and saw it as very much about selfishness and fear, scarcity, and holding on to what little we have. I'm so happy that Hideo chose to share his story about his grandparents' experience in the internment camps at that time. It's a story that America is learning to tell about itself, that we were so filled with fear and distrust and even hatred and racism that we were willing to force children and their parents to become enemies and be put in camps. Listening to that spirit that's within America, and it's part of the wholeness of humanity. The clergy, the people of the Clergy Letter Project just recently wrote another letter. And they said, communities are stronger and individuals within those communities are healthier, both physically and spiritually, when people are not needlessly pitted against one another. Clergy Letter Project members represent religious leaders from many faith traditions. And although we do not always agree with each other, our traditions adhere to the golden rule. We listen to each other, we treat one another with respect, and our values that we uphold in these dialogues is a respect for truth, for science, for the diversity of human traditions, and for the dignity of all persons. Goes on from there, talks about the values of human dignity, the value of truth, the value of science, the value of religion, values and purposes. And the members of the Clergy Project urge all American people in general and our political leaders in particular to consider how actions that censor good science, render some individuals invisible, and spread messages of hate in place of love work to destroy our communities, harm the most vulnerable among us, and forsake our most precious shared values. Clergy Letter Project, and on Wednesday I'll put a link to that Clergy Letter Project. You can find it, theclergyletterproject.com, but I'll also put it in the newsletter. Clergy Letter Project began with some Christian activists in the United States demanded that creationism be taught alongside the theories of evolution in public schools. The problem, of course, is that creationism is not born of scientific discipline. So their demand was born not of a desire to give alternatives of ways of thinking, but to force scientific understanding to bow under doctrinal ideas and Christian authority. And of course, it was not all of Christianity, just a particular part of Christianity who thought that they were everything. Of course, this was not the beginning of this attitude. This kind of anti-science, denial of progress attitude certainly was around when Nicholas Copernicus was noticing that maybe those lights in the sky were parts of circles of planets going around the sun. Repressive and authoritarian attitudes continued to rise and fall throughout the centuries as they always did before. They took a social form in the United States of America in the 1900s, late 1800s. It's called fundamentalism back then. Upholding the fundamentals. They're all eroding and we're losing what is fundamentally true. That fundamentalism rose up against science and then was marginalized early in the 20th century, and then it rose again later in the century. And then there were Christian activists who were demanding that creationism be taught alongside the theory of evolution in public schools. And there was a guy named Michael Zimmerman. He was teaching over in Connecticut at the time, working in the university there. And he heard that the Gatlinburg schools in south of where he lived, in another state, had decided to adopt an anti-science curriculum. They weren't going to teach the two, the truth and the falsity of science side by side. No, they were just going to teach the truth to their kids about when the earth started and how it was created. The idea immediately struck Michael Zimmerman as very wrong. And because he knew, he was taught science, paleontology, he taught science, he worked with scientists, and he worked with Christians. And he knew there were many Christians who totally understood that reality was reality, and that the teachings of their faith could help them live with what is real and true, to be better, more present on the earth. I am told that Albert Einstein once said, "Only two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity." And I'm not sure about the universe. I hold up this quote from Einstein because, in fact, it only appears on the internet. There is no record that he literally ever said that. But the way in which there's something resonant and true about the idea too. In 2004, Michael Zimmerman, who was then working at the University of Wisconsin, learned that Grantsburg, Wisconsin, had adopted this curriculum. And he wrote a letter using an Episcopalian friend of his that started within the community of Christian believers, and I read a little piece of it later, within the community of Christian believers, there were areas of dispute and disagreement, including the proper way to interpret Holy Scripture. While virtually all Christians take the Bible seriously and hold it to be the authoritative center in matters of faith and practice, the overwhelming majority do not read the Bible literally as they would a science textbook. That's how it begins. In just a few weeks, less than a month, he got over 200 signatures, and he convinced the Gatlinburg school, the Grantsburg school board to reverse their course. Began to teach science again as science. There have been many people since then. It was funny, just within a few years after the Christian Clergy Letter Project had been written and they had made a difference in Wisconsin, he started to move it, Michael Zimmerman moved it to a much more national movement, and that's where I connected with it, in early 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. Started hearing about, he was asking for people to sign this letter in which science and religion were not enemies of one another. They were just different ways of approaching the one absolute truth and trying to understand how we should live together. Science doesn't tell you a whole lot about kindness and compassion, or maybe we can do studies about kindness and compassion and understand it, but to be really motivated, it's usually not a scientific study that motivates you to be kind and compassionate. It's your relationship to other human beings. Religion has always been built around dealing with moments of anxiety and fear and alienation and isolation, and helping us to live more vibrantly in the face of those with what is ultimately true. And so this desire to fuse the two together in some way, or leave them as two separate magisteria that talk to one another and change one another, is one of the other alternative ways of talking about religion and science and how they work together grew. And we started to call for, when he started calling for Religion and Science Sundays. And then quickly realized that the Jews were being left out, so then it became Religion and Science Weekends. One weekend in February usually, in which we would talk about the respect and the dignity between scientists and religious leaders and how those two work together. And then it became all human beings. We got, I think the last count was over 18,000 clergy have signed on to this letter. and many, many more people have joined in. I noticed recently there's an organization called scienceforthechurch.org, and they are a group of scientists who are also Christians who said, our vision is of a day when churches embrace science as a mean for spiritual growth. We admit that some today posit science against faith, but we actually want churches to read the book of Scripture and the book of nature as sources for understanding God and creation. Especially want to nurture people who are scientists, mathematics, STEM professionals, to be honored and understood within religious communities. The Dalai Lama in Buddhism has also emphasized over and over, if scientific analysis were conclusively to demonstrate that claims in Buddhism were false, then we must accept the findings of science and abandon the false claims, or just adopt them as metaphors for the one truth. Rabbis have signed a similar letter. There's also UU. The UUs eventually, who were part of the Christian Clergy Letter Project, eventually wrote a UU version, which is much more interfaith and honors all, not just pure Christian clergy creator language, but affirm the diversity of people who need to live in harmony with science. And then there's that beautiful quote from Albert Einstein. Great theoretical physicist, wrote a book called My Credo in 1932. The most beautiful and deepest experience a person can have is the sense of the mysterious. It is the underlying principle of religion as well as of all serious endeavor in art and in science. And the one who has never had this experience seems to me, if not dead, then at least mentally blind. The sense that behind everything that can be experienced, there is something that our mind cannot grasp. It's not a puzzle to be solved, but something that goes beyond the limits of our own minds, but whose beauty and sublimity reaches us only indirectly as a feeble reflection of its grandeur. This is religiousness. In this sense, I am religious. To me, it suffices to wonder at the secrets and to attempt very humbly to grasp with my mind the mere image of the lofty structure of all that is. This notion of the wonder and the awe and the beauty of abundance not only gives us joy as individuals, but it brings us together to find ways to feed one another, to cure diseases, to find ways to bring more food to those who are hungry, to be more welcoming to those who are from alien lands. Science teaches us the practical side of the wonders and the glories that are always leading us to enjoy life and enjoy one another and connect. I was reading another text, important wisdom text, called Calvin and Hobbes. And there was a beautiful image from Calvin and Hobbes. Can you get that out? Can you read that? They're digging.
Somebody read the words aloud.
Oh yeah, let me go ahead. So that's Hobbes. Hobbes the tiger has come upon his friend Calvin, and Hobbes says, "Why are you digging a hole?" And the little boy, just like a little boy does, digging. Little girls do this very well too. I'm looking for buried treasure down in the mud. And then Hobbes says, "What have you found?" And he goes, "Oh, a few dirty rocks, a weird root, and some disgusting grubs. And then Hobbes responded, on your first try? He goes, there's treasure everywhere. Listening to those who understand science and religion fused or cooperating or communicating in a greater whole, moving towards kindness and compassion and care, to nurture one another in this difficult world, in a time in which fear is rising up and dividing people. We look for an opportunity, drawing on that sense of wonder and power, greater than any cloud, greater than the thunder itself, full of power, to stand up for what is right and good in this country. I've been so pleased that the Pope of Catholic Christianity called out the wrong statements, incorrect statements by the Vice President of this country, leading on what Marianne Buddy had said, the Bishop of Episcopal Church in Washington, speaking to the President of the United States, be compassionate. And of course his response was boring, and she must be an anti-Trump hater, just like Jesus was, right? But she was drawing on the teachings of her tradition, of all universal religions, to be compassionate. And so we must all continue to stand up, give voice. There's an economic protest that's coming up, and maybe Trump won't find that one quite as boring if it's effective. And if that one's not effective, we will find other ways to continue to stand in the awe and the wonder of this world for what is right and good. To remind us how we strengthen this community and what it means to be people of faith, we now have a beautiful song by the choir.
We are moving on to the returning to the world portion of the order of service. The offering is an ancient element of worship. The act of giving, regardless of the amount, is a spiritual practice that expresses our thankfulness and generosity. We live these values in abundance, joyfully sharing our gifts and strength in service in a greater good is one way we create the beloved community. The offering, we will now receive the offering. Thank you, Ken. We are blessed by your generosity. May your gifts make a difference in our communities through the ministries of this fellowship. And now please rise in body and spirit for our closing hymn. Hymn number 175, We Celebrate the Web of Life. The lyrics by Alicia S. Carpenter are shown on the screen.
Remain standing as we open our hearts to the blessings of the days to come in a world in which people can outright lie, can say things that are proven untrue and hurtful and yet still get elected. We must be filled with awareness of the abundance of love, the kindness and goodness of human beings, and the power we have to make the world more loving, just, and fair. So may it be.
Now we will extinguish the flame, and the words are on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts into in our lives until we are together again. And in our custom tradition, we'll close in a circle.